I mean, I really want you to imagine a very specific kind of dread.
Oh, yeah. It's a dark place to start, but we have to.
Right. So you're sitting in your living room, the phone rings, and it's the detective assigned to your family member's murder case.
The call you've been waiting for.
Exactly. For years, you've been waiting for this exact call. You're bracing yourself thinking they're going to say they finally have a suspect in custody.
Or that they're drawing up the arrest warrants.
Yeah. But instead, the detective clears their throat, says, well, we are bringing the case to national television. We're going to put it on a broadcast special.
And, the public perception of that exact moment is completely inverted from the reality of what it actually signifies.
Because as a viewer, you see these highly produced broadcast specials, and you naturally think, oh, law enforcement is pulling out all the stops.
Right. You see it as a massive victory.
But for the family on the receiving end of that call, it is definitely not a victory. It's really the ultimate sign of desperation.
Yeah. It means law enforcement has completely run out of options.
The case file is just gathering dust. They are telling you, politely but firmly, that the investigation is entirely stalled.
It's the moment the system formally admits defeat. And, well, that is exactly what we are unpacking today.
We really are. We are pulling from two incredibly rigorous, analytical deep dives into unsolved true crime today. One is called Defeating the Detectives, and the other is Shadows of Justice.
Two fantastic sources.
And the mission of this deep dive is to move entirely past the sensationalism. We are not here to play armchair detective.
No, absolutely not. We are going to examine the actual technical, structural reasons why the most heavily investigated, well-funded cases in American history remain stubbornly unsolved.
Publicly scrutinized cases, too. Cases that literally broke the investigators. Cases where the evidence technically exists, but the final answer just, it refuses to emerge.
Which brings us to the core paradox of public attention. You mentioned that phone call about going on national television. What's fascinating here is how counterproductive that massive spotlight can actually be to the mechanics of an investigation.
I've always thought of a massive true crime television broadcast, like looking at a faint star through a telescope.
Okay, I like that.
And then someone turns on a stadium floodlight right next to you. Yes, for a brief, blinding second, the entire area is illuminated.
Millions of people are suddenly looking.
Exactly, but the sheer brightness of that floodlight actually blows out the optics for the people on the ground who are trying to look for those really subtle, nuanced clues.
You just get completely washed out by the glare.
You do. It's blinding.
That is a much more accurate way to visualize it than assuming more light always equals more clarity.
Right.
But before we get into the specific mechanics of how that glare blinds investigators, we really need to set the stage with the statistical reality, the math that makes this deep dive so urgent.
The numbers.
We have to talk about the clearance rate crisis.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the numbers we are looking at are frankly staggering.
They are. If we look at the FBI's Uniform Crime Report statistics, the national homicide clearance rate, which simply means the percentage of murder cases that result in an arrest and prosecution, has been in a freefall.
A complete freefall.
Back in the 1960s, American law enforcement cleared roughly 90% of all homicides.
90%.
9 out of 10. A murder happened, an arrest followed. That was the historical norm.
And today, what are we looking at now?
By 2020, that clearance rate had plummeted to just 51%.
Wow.
And in 2024, it sits at roughly 61%.
So it's barely better than a coin flip.
Exactly. Barely better than a coin flip. And when you translate those percentages into human lives, the math becomes horrifying.
It really does.
In 2024 alone, approximately 6,280 murders in the United States went entirely unsolved.
Just in 1 year.
Yes. And if you zoom out to look at the period from 1965 to 2024, over 350,390 cases of homicide and non-negligent manslaughter went completely unsolved. No arrests, no charges.
I just want to let that number sink in for a second for everyone listening. Over 352,000 families without answers.
It's a staggering volume of grief.
That is the population of a medium-sized American city, just wiped out, with zero accountability.
And this is happening quietly, right in the background, while the true crime entertainment industry focuses its cameras on the cases that eventually do get solved.
Right, because those make for good TV endings.
Exactly. It creates a massive disconnect between public perception, the idea that advanced science and television resolve everything, and the investigative reality on the ground.
The reality is much messier.
Very messy. The modern legal threshold requires an immense amount of forensic certainty to secure a conviction, which, frankly, drastically lowers that clearance rate compared to the 1960s.
Which brings us back to that floodlight analogy, the television broadcasts.
Right.
If local police are overwhelmed and sitting on cold cases, they turn to these massive national shows. But according to our sources, those broadcasts have specific, severe technical limitations.
The primary limitation is the signal-to-noise ratio.
Okay, break that down for me.
Let's say a major network airs a 2-hour special on a high-profile case. In the 72 hours following that broadcast, the tip lines will generate between 5,000 and 15,000 calls.
Wait, I have a hard time accepting that national broadcasts are inherently failures.
How so?
Well, didn't shows like America's Most Wanted catch hundreds of fugitives? How do you reconcile that massive success rate with the idea that tip lines are just useless noise?
That is a crucial distinction to make, actually. Shows focused on catching known fugitives are highly successful because they are providing the public with a specific face.
Oh, right.
A specific name and a known entity. The investigation is already complete, they just need a location.
They're just crowdsourcing a manhunt.
Exactly. But when a broadcast profiles an unsolved case with an unknown suspect, the dynamic flips entirely.
Because people don't know who they're looking for.
Right. The vast, overwhelming majority of those 15,000 tips become forensically worthless noise. It is well-meaning viewers experiencing source amnesia or memory conformity, connecting completely unrelated events.
Like, what kind of things are they calling in with?
They will call and say, I saw a guy who looked like the composite sketch at a gas station 3 states away in 1987.
Oh.
Or, my neighbor always seemed a little off.
But the problem isn't just that the tips are bad, right? It is that investigators are legally and procedurally bound to log and chase these leads.
Yes, that's the real burden. They have to document every single call. They have to run background checks on the quote-unquote strange neighbor.
Which takes incredible manpower.
It takes so much time. They have to pull old records for that gas station 3 states away. It forces them to waste months, sometimes years, chasing ghosts.
Wow.
The sheer administrative burden of processing 15,000 dead-end tips completely diverts them from the actual evidentiary threads that matter.
And there is a second, even more damaging limitation here, right? Alerting the suspect.
Oh, this is massive.
When a case is extensively covered publicly, the media essentially hands the perpetrator a detailed discovery file of exactly what law enforcement knows, and more importantly, what they do not know.
Precisely. If the television anchor announces, police are still searching for the murder weapon believed to be a hunting knife,
The killer sitting on their couch just received a critical situational update.
they know exactly what to get rid of.
They can preemptively destroy evidence. They know which witnesses the police have spoken to, which allows them to intimidate people into silence.
Or they can craft highly specific alibis for the exact timeline gaps that the television special just conveniently laid out for them.
So the broadcast serves as an accidental blueprint for the perpetrator to evade capture.
It really does. It's an operational security nightmare for the police.
Okay, but if public attention actively damages active police work by tipping off suspects and flooding the tip lines with useless noise, why do police departments ever agree to these broadcasts?
It comes down to structural unsolvability.
Structural unsolvability.
Right. Our sources point out that some cases are fundamentally unsolvable with the legal standards of the modern era, no matter how much public scrutiny is applied.
Like, they just lack the building blocks for a court case.
Exactly. If a murder is committed without witnesses, without usable DNA, without surveillance footage, it lacks the evidentiary foundation for a modern prosecution.
Even if the detectives know who did it.
Even if they are absolutely confident they know who committed the crime, they cannot clear the beyond a reasonable doubt threshold in a courtroom.
Wow. So they just throw a Hail Mary.
Yeah, so they roll the dice on a broadcast, hoping for a miracle confession or maybe a guilt-ridden accomplice to call in, knowing full well it might bury them in useless data.
They are hoping the floodlight catches someone hiding in the bushes, but accepting that it will blind them in the process.
That's exactly it.
But if public tips cannot save a case, it all comes down to the physical evidence.
Always.
And that leads us to the devastating reality of what happens when the first few hours of an investigation go horribly, irreversibly wrong.
The catastrophe of the first hours. This is perhaps the most critical factor in why cases go permanently cold.
How small of a window are we talking about here?
Forensic analysts argue that the trajectory of a decades-long cold case is almost always decided in the first 60 to 400 minutes.
That is so fast.
It is incredibly fast.
Let's look at how that plays out. Because our sources bring up a chilling example from over a century ago. The Villisca Axe Murders of 1912.
A horrific case.
We are in a small, quiet prairie town in Iowa, population around 2,500, doors unlocked. And on June 9th, the Moore family and 2 young guests, the Stillinger sisters, go to sleep.
All 8 of them.
All 8 of them. And none of them wake up.
It is one of the most disturbing crime scenes in American history, but what makes it so frustrating for forensic analysts looking back is the sheer amount of deliberate, methodical signature behavior the killer left behind.
Because this was not a frenzied, chaotic scene.
No, not at all.
The killer went room to room in the dark, murdering 8 people individually without waking the others. And then they stayed in the house.
Which is terrifying.
Every mirror in the house was covered with clothing from the victims. Every window was covered.
The killer unscrewed the 2 downstairs lamps, not turned them off, but unscrewed them at the base so they could not be easily lit if someone entered.
It's so calculated. And they even brought food, right?
Yeah. A slab of unsmoked bacon was found near the axe, which belonged to the family in the guest room.
That is so bizarre.
A piece of bacon rind was on the floor of the master bedroom. The axe itself had been wiped clean, but, not thoroughly.
What do you mean?
Traces of biological material were left behind, suggesting they tried to use the bacon to wipe the blade, perhaps believing the animal fat would act as a solvent for the blood.
Oh, that's incredibly gruesome. But it's intensely ritualistic behavior.
Very.
But here is the massive investigative failure. The scene was completely ruined before any official investigation even started.
Right, because this is 1912.
The concept of crime scene tape just does not exist.
Not at all.
When the bodies were discovered, the house was not secured. Dozens of curious, horrified townspeople simply walked right through the front door and toured the house.
They literally treated it like an open house.
They completely trampled the environment. Any potential footprints, any trace evidence, any subtle clues regarding the killer's movement in and out of that house were permanently destroyed.
Contaminating a crime scene is not just about stepping on footprints,
Right, it's about context.
Exactly. It is like taking a beautifully organized library and having 50 people walk in, take books off the shelves, flip through them, and put them back in completely random places.
Wow, that's a great way to put it.
The information is still physically inside the room, but the context, the Dewey Decimal System of the crime, showing what happened in what order, is completely destroyed.
And it is easy to look at 1912 and attribute that failure to the pre-forensic era.
We assume they just did not know any better.
Right. Coroners at the time were often elected officials, not trained medical examiners. But if we fast forward to 1996, to one of the most heavily scrutinized cases in modern history, we see the exact same structural barrier created by early scene contamination.
Despite all the advancements in forensic science.
Exactly. You were talking about the John Benet Ramsey case.
Yes. December 26, 1996, in Boulder, Colorado. This case represents what many forensic experts consider the most catastrophically mishandled crime scene in modern American history.
A 911 call comes in at 5:52 a.m. Patsy Ramsey reports her 6-year-old daughter missing,
And there is a 3-page handwritten ransom note on the stairs.
demanding $118,000,
Mm-hmm.
which is an incredibly specific number because it was almost the exact amount of John Ramsey's Christmas bonus.
It's highly suspicious. But here is where the clock starts on that critical 60 to 400-minute window.
Right.
When Boulder police arrive, they treat the home as a kidnapping scene, not a homicide scene.
Which dictates an entirely different protocol. They do not lock down the perimeter.
Not at all. For 7 critical hours, family friends are called and allowed to gather inside the house.
7 hours.
Yes. People are moving freely, touching surfaces, contaminating the environment with stray hairs and fibers.
And what about the parents?
The parents are not immediately separated and interviewed, which is the absolute baseline standard protocol to prevent story alignment or the accidental contamination of each other's memories.
That's Investigation 101.
Exactly. The ransom note itself is physically handled by multiple people, completely compromising the paper for fingerprinting or chemical analysis.
But the most devastating moment happens at 1:00 p.m.
It's hard to even think about.
The police actually instruct John Ramsey and a family friend to search the house. They go into the basement, and John Ramsey opens the door to a small wine cellar.
And he finds John Benet's body.
Yes, and instead of leaving the scene pristine, he physically picks up his daughter's body and carries her upstairs.
The heartbreak of a father doing that in a moment of sheer panic is completely understandable on a human level.
Of course it is. Any parent would want to hold their child.
But on a forensic level,
On a forensic level, it is the ultimate point of no return.
the primary crime scene is irreversibly contaminated. Any microscopic trace evidence on her body, any foreign fibers from the killer, any spatial data regarding exactly how she was positioned, it is all hopelessly compromised.
Gone forever.
When a body is moved, you lose the ability to accurately measure lividity and rigor mortis in the context of the environment, which destroys the ability to establish an exact timeline of death.
So whether it is 1912 or 1996, the lack of early evidence preservation creates a permanent structural barrier to modern prosecution.
You cannot reconstruct the original context of the scene once it has been altered.
Okay, but we have been talking about ruined physical evidence. What if the evidence isn't ruined by people?
Oh, what do you mean?
What if the environment naturally erases it? Or worse, what if the scene is perfectly preserved, but there is simply no digital footprint to explain it?
This raises an important question, and it takes us into the concept of the void before cameras.
The void before cameras.
Yes. In the modern era, we are tethered to a digital reality. But historical cases often feature what forensic analysts call ambiguous evidence.
Ambiguous evidence.
Right. Situations where the physical evidence is perfectly preserved, but it exists in a complete informational vacuum.
Like the Sodder Children in 1945.
A perfect example.
It is Christmas Eve in West Virginia. George and Jenny Sodder wake up to their farmhouse on fire. They escape with 4 of their kids, but 5 of their children, ranging from 5 to 14 years old, are trapped upstairs.
And George Sodder attempts to mount a rescue, but the environment itself seems to actively work against him, almost mechanically.
He tries to find the ladder he always keeps on the side of the house to reach the upper windows. It is completely gone.
Just missing.
He tries to pull his massive work truck up to the house to climb on the roof. The truck, which worked perfectly the day before, suddenly will not start.
Which makes no sense.
He goes to the rain barrel for water. It is bone dry. And when they finally manage to contact the fire department, it takes the crew nearly 8 hours to arrive.
The house burns to the ground in 45 minutes.
It is a profound tragedy, but it crosses into a century-long mystery because of what investigators find, or rather what they do not find, in the ashes.
No.
None whatsoever. The official conclusion at the time was that the fire burned hot enough to completely incinerate 5 children.
But forensic scientists and modern fire investigators note that this is chemically and physically impossible in a standard wood frame house fire.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why is it impossible? Fire destroys everything eventually, right?
It does not. The specific physics of a house fire make complete incineration impossible.
Really?
Yeah. Wood burns at a specific temperature, usually peaking around 1,500 to 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit in a residential blaze, and it only sustains that peak for a short duration before the fuel is exhausted.
Okay.
Human bone, and specifically the enamel of children's teeth, is incredibly fire-resistant. Enamel is the hardest substance in the human body.
Right, that makes sense.
To completely reduce a human body to ash, a commercial crematorium has to operate at roughly 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit for several hours, and even then, the remaining bone fragments have to be mechanically pulverized.
And 5 children means 10 sets of teeth. Dozens of highly calcified bones.
Exactly. Not a single tooth or identifiable bone fragment was ever found in the ashes of the Sodder home. It defies the basic chemistry of fire.
The family never believed they died. Decades later, in 1967, Jenny Sodder receives a photograph in the mail of a young adult man who looks strikingly like their missing son, Louis, with a cryptic message on the back.
And they hired a private investigator who went to Kentucky to track the postmark, and that investigator vanished off the face of the earth.
Just gone.
The Sodder case is a textbook example of ambiguous evidence. The complete absence of bones creates a permanent state of unresolvable uncertainty.
Because there's no data.
None. And to truly understand the terror of the pre-digital void, we have to look at the Yuba County Five.
Oh man, this case. This case defies every single logical pathway in my brain.
It is incredibly baffling.
It is February 1978. 5 young men from California, all friends, all with mild intellectual disabilities, go to a college basketball game.
A normal night out.
Right. They leave the game in a 1969 Mercury Montego to drive the 50 miles back home to Marysville. It is a route the driver, Jack Madruga, knows intimately.
But they do not go home.
No. 3 days later, their car is found parked on a snowy mountain road in the Plumas National Forest in the Sierra Nevada mountains.
They are 70 miles in the wrong direction.
The car is perfectly intact. No crash, no mechanical failure, keys in the ignition, plenty of gas in the tank.
But the car is pointed up the mountain, away from civilization, stuck in a snowdrift they could have easily pushed it out of.
And all 5 men are gone.
It is not until June, months later, that a profound and disturbing discovery is made.
Roughly 20 miles further up the mountain from the abandoned car, searchers find a remote Forest Service trailer. The bodies of 4 of the men are found in and around this trailer.
The detail that makes this completely incomprehensible is Ted Weir.
Yeah. He was found inside the trailer, partially mummified. The pathology showed he had survived for approximately 13 weeks after they disappeared.
13 weeks, alone, in the freezing cold.
And the trailer was a designated emergency shelter. It was fully stocked. There was a massive supply of canned food. There were matches. There was a propane heater connected to a tank outside.
And he used almost none of it.
He starved and froze to death over 3 months in a room that contained the exact means to survive.
And the 5th man, Gary Mathias, who had a history of schizophrenia, vanished entirely and was never found.
What's fascinating here is how the complete absence of a digital footprint stalls the investigation. We have a perfectly preserved scene: the intact car, the untouched food, the unlit heater in the trailer.
But we have absolutely no data to explain the psychological behavior.
Here's where it gets really interesting. In the modern era, if a car ends up 70 miles off course, detectives have an entire web of digital storytelling to rely on.
Absolutely.
They have GPS tracking from smartphones showing the exact route taken. They have toll cameras capturing who was physically sitting in the driver's seat.
They have cell tower pings showing the precise moment the phones veered off the main highway.
Exactly. They have text messages or search histories to tell them if the plan changed. But how do modern detectives even begin to approach a case like Yuba County, where the only data points are a parked car, an unused propane heater, and complete silence?
They cannot approach it mathematically. That is the terrifying reality of the pre-digital void.
It's just a black hole.
Without a digital tether, a car can drive 70 miles the wrong way, or 5 children can vanish from a burning house, leaving a vacuum of data that no modern forensic tool can retroactively fill.
So they're just guessing.
Investigators are left entirely with interpreting human behavior, and human behavior operating under duress without context is often completely unreadable.
The absence of surveillance is one thing. It is just a tragic reality of the era in which the crime occurred.
Right.
But it is a completely different level of difficulty when a perpetrator actively, maliciously weaponizes their knowledge of forensics against the investigators.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are moving into what our sources identify as Pattern 2.
Pattern 2.
Killers who deeply understood the investigative systems of their time and used that knowledge to render themselves scientifically invisible.
The ultimate example of this has to be the Black Dahlia. Elizabeth Short, Los Angeles, 1947.
A very famous case, but often misunderstood forensically.
A 22-year-old aspiring actress found in a vacant lot. I want to be careful not to sensationalize this, but the technical reality of what was done to her body is the entire reason the case was never solved.
The precision was medically unprecedented. The medical examiner determined she had been held captive for days. She was completely drained of blood while still alive.
Which is horrifying.
Her body was precisely bisected at the waist, displaying an advanced knowledge of anatomy, specifically the ability to cut through the spine exactly between the lumbar vertebrae.
And her face was carved into a Glasgow smile.
Yes.
A Glasgow smile, for those unfamiliar, is a wound caused by cutting the face from the edges of the mouth to the ears. It is horrific. But the forensic nightmare for the Los Angeles Police Department was the cleaning process.
The killer meticulously surgically washed her body before transporting and posing her.
Why does that matter so much?
Well, in 1947, investigators relied heavily on trace evidence. Edmund Locard's exchange principle, the idea that every contact leaves a physical trace. Hair, fibers, bodily fluids.
And the killer systematically removed all of it.
All of it. And a week later, they escalated their countermeasures.
The killer mailed a package to the Los Angeles Examiner containing Elizabeth Short's address book, her birth certificate, and photographs.
But before mailing it, they soaked every single item in gasoline.
This is a highly specific chemical countermeasure. Gasoline acts as a powerful solvent. Fingerprints are essentially composed of water, oils, and lipids.
Right.
So soaking paper in gasoline dissolves the lipids, completely eradicating any chance of recovering a latent fingerprint.
It's brilliantly evil. The prime suspect over the decades became Dr. George Hodel, a physician with surgical skills and a dark history, whose own son, an LAPD detective, spent years building a case against him.
But because of the killer's forensic countermeasures in 1947, there was never enough physical evidence to prosecute.
The Black Dahlia killer operated in the shadows, erasing their presence chemically and physically.
But around 20 years later, in Northern California, another killer emerged who took the exact opposite approach.
He did not hide from the system. He actively manipulated the structural limitations of it to create a mythos, the Zodiac killer.
Between 1968 and 1969, 5 confirmed murders, 2 survivors. But the murders were almost secondary to the performance.
The Zodiac sent taunting letters to Bay Area newspapers. He demanded they be printed on the front page. He included pieces of a victim's bloody shirt to prove he was the author.
He sent ciphers, elaborate, incredibly complex cryptograms that he claimed contained his identity. He completely understood the structural limitations of 1969 law enforcement.
By turning his crimes into a public puzzle, he flooded the police with amateur sleuths, false confessions, and panic.
We have to talk about how 1969 police departments communicated, or rather how they didn't.
Oh, this is a critical point. There was no centralized digital database. If a murder happened in Vallejo and another happened in San Francisco, those jurisdictions operated in silos.
They communicated via teletype or by physically mailing files back and forth.
And the Zodiac actively exploited these jurisdictional boundaries. He committed crimes in different counties specifically to fracture the investigation across multiple departments that were not efficiently sharing information.
He weaponized the public's attention against the police, and he weaponized the math of cryptography against them.
One of those ciphers, the 340-character cipher, utilized homophonic substitution, meaning one letter in the alphabet could be represented by multiple different symbols.
Which flattens the frequency analysis that code breakers normally use to crack ciphers.
It worked. The 340-character cipher went uncracked for 51 years.
51 years.
It wasn't until 2020 that a team of amateur code breakers using specialized software finally deciphered it.
Do you know what it said?
What?
It said, "I hope you're having lots of fun and trying to catch me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber."
No name.
No name. Just more taunting from a ghost.
This raises an important question about these perpetrators and our perception of them.
It is a vital question. Are these killers actually evil geniuses, playing a multi-dimensional game of chess with law enforcement? Or did they just have the incredible dumb luck of operating in an era where police could not run a simple database check on a fingerprint or a stray strand of hair?
It is a combination of both, but the era advantage is massive. The person who killed Elizabeth Short understood exactly what 1947 detectives would look for and chemically erased it. The Zodiac understood how 1969 media and physical police jurisdictions worked.
They were methodical, yes, but their perceived genius was heavily subsidized by the technological limitations of their time.
But the era advantage only lasts as long as the era.
Which brings us to the ultimate equalizer. The ultimate weapon against these methodical, era-specific killers is a technology they could not have possibly anticipated while they were covering their tracks.
We are entering the era of the DNA fork and the profound mathematical promise of forensic genetic genealogy.
To understand the DNA fork, we have to look at the prime suspect in the Zodiac case, Arthur Lee Allen.
The perfect suspect.
If you were building a suspect from scratch, you would build him. He perfectly matched the physical descriptions from surviving victims and witnesses.
He literally owned a Zodiac brand watch with the exact cross-circle symbol the killer used on his letters.
He placed himself near the crime scenes.
The circumstantial case was a mountain. But Arthur Lee Allen died in 1992, right before DNA technology really matured into a usable forensic tool.
Decades later, investigators finally tested the trace DNA recovered from the back of the Zodiac stamps. The stamps the killer physically licked to mail those taunting letters. The DNA did not match Arthur Lee Allen.
Which creates an absolutely maddening investigative fork in the road. Either Arthur Lee Allen, the most perfect circumstantial suspect in true crime history, isn't the Zodiac, or someone else licked the stamps.
Because in the 1960s, a stamp could be licked by a post office worker, a roommate, a friend.
It highlights the immense frustration of early DNA evidence. You have biological material, but its provenance is uncertain.
We see a very similar frustration in the JonBenet Ramsey case. In 2008, Advanced DNA testing on her clothing revealed an unidentified male profile.
It is a real uncontaminated profile, but it does not match the family who were formally cleared.
It does not match Gary Oliva, a convicted predator in the area. It does not match John Mark Carr, the man who falsely confessed from Thailand.
It matches no one.
Wait, I am lost on the CODIS matching. If they have the DNA from the John Benet scene, why does it matter if it's a one-to-one match or a genealogical match? DNA is DNA, isn't it?
It is a fundamentally different mathematical approach. CODIS looks at 20 core loci, specific markers on your DNA.
Okay.
It is a one-to-one matching system. You upload the crime scene DNA, and you wait for it to ping against a known offender who has been arrested and had their DNA entered into that specific government system.
So if they were never arrested,
If your killer has never been arrested for a felony or is incredibly careful, they will simply never be in CODIS. The algorithm is only looking for an exact match to a criminal.
this is where the game changes entirely. In 2023, Boulder police confirmed they are finally using forensic genetic genealogy on that unknown male profile from the John Benet case.
This technology is revolutionary because it abandons the one-to-one search. Forensic genealogy bypasses CODIS entirely.
How does it work then?
Instead, investigators take the crime scene DNA and upload it to public, consumer-level genealogy databases, the ones people use to explore their ancestry.
Oh, wow.
They aren't looking for the killer directly. They are analyzing hundreds of thousands of single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs, to find shared blocks of DNA called centimorgans.
So they were looking for the killer's third cousins, their great aunts, their distant relatives.
Yes, they build a massive family tree backward, tracing those distant relatives up to a set of common ancestors from the 1800s or 1900s.
And then they build the family tree forward again, branch by branch, until they find a single male relative of the correct age who was living in Boulder, Colorado in December 1996.
It completely circumvents a suspect's own careful efforts to avoid police databases.
You can surgically wash a crime scene, you can burn your fingerprints off with acid, you can avoid getting arrested your entire life.
But you cannot erase your third cousin's decision to take a mail-in ancestry test.
This is the exact same technology that caught the Golden State Killer after 44 years.
He was a former police officer. He knew exactly how the system worked and how to avoid detection.
He terrorized California for decades and thought he had gotten away with it forever. Decades later, a distant relative spits in a tube to find out where their grandparents are from, and the door gets kicked in by the FBI.
It is the most powerful identification tool ever created, precisely because it relies on the biological data of innocent relatives.
So what does this all mean for the people who committed these crimes decades ago, the ones who thought they successfully defeated the detectives of 1947 or 1978 or 1996? Does the Golden State Killer case prove that the quote-unquote perfect crime actually has an expiration date?
It strongly suggests that the window for permanent anonymity is rapidly closing. The science is finally catching up to the ghosts of the past.
The science is catching up. And as we bring this deep dive to a close, I want to pull back from the DNA algorithms, from the ciphers, from the formal limits of house fires, and look at the human element that connects every single one of these files.
It always comes back to the people.
Behind the 352,390 unsolved homicides since 1965, behind the massive true crime entertainment complex, there are real families.
Yes.
There are parents who funded billboards on highways. There are siblings who waited by the phone for decades. They are waiting for a resolution that might finally be unlocked by modern science.
That brings us to the most provocative thought of all. Our sources identified a final thread running through these cases, pattern 4.
What exactly is pattern 4?
The true horror of an unsolved case isn't just that the answer is unknowable to the public. It is that in every single one of these cases, the truth does exist.
It's not lost.
It is not lost to the universe. Someone was there, someone knew. That knowledge lived inside a human mind.
Wow.
Someone actively chose, and perhaps continues to choose, to keep it a secret. The killer, an accomplice, a spouse who washed a bloody shirt and actively looked the other way.
They held that truth and they stayed silent.
Which leaves you with a chilling question. How many secrets of this magnitude are walking past you on the street or standing behind you in line at the grocery store every single day, completely undetected?
They are out there, just walking around in the daylight. We started this by talking about how a true crime broadcast is like turning on a floodlight next to a telescope. It blinds us for a second.
It does.
But maybe with forensic genealogy and relentless scientific advancement, we do not need the floodlight anymore. Maybe we're finally just turning on the lights.